So welcome to all of you who are joining this very interesting webinar today. We have people with a diverse experience who are all coming from different angle to contribute to this webinar today. We will be talking about the impact of technology in the agri and dairy sector, and what is the ground reality of the technology impact on agri and dairy sector today. That's what we'll be focusing on. Let me introduce the people on the panel today. Professor Dr. Ashok Jhunjhunwala, he is the moderator for the panel today. He is an institute professor at IIT Madras, Chennai. Professor is a member of National Academy of Engineering. He is a fellow of IEEE and World Wireless Research Forum. He is also a fellow at 4 Science and Technology Academies in India: INSA, INAS, IAS, and INAE. He was conferred the highest civilian honor, which is Padma Shri in India. He has received a number of awards in India, including Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award, Vikram Sarabhai Research Award, H.K. Firodi Award.
Move on.
Yeah. So what I need to importantly say is that he is the person who has conceived and built the India's first university affiliated business park, which is IITM Research Park. He has been developing many products for the masses. And then we have Dr. Sudha Narayanan. She is a research fellow at India Food Research Quality Institute in New Delhi. Her current focus projects include agricultural value chains in India and Bangladesh, contract farming, impact evaluation of agri-tech intervention, functioning of farmer FPOs in India, etc. She is also working on extensively on gender, social protection, human development in India. She holds a PhD in agricultural economics from Cornell University. We have Mahesh Yagnaraman. He is the India country director at Acumen since January 2018, where he leads investing, business development, and leadership development for Acumen. Acumen uses the power of entrepreneurship to build a world where everyone has the opportunity to live with dignity. He has been an entrepreneur and CEO and strategic professional with over 30 years of experience. He has a degree in economics from Delhi University and an MBA from XLRI. We also have Shailendra Tiwari, who was founder of Fasal. Shailendra and Fasal as an organization which is working towards making precision agriculture accessible to every farmer in the world. They have a full service progressive horticultural platform anchored in an IT SaaS platform. So welcome all of you. I myself, I'm Ravi Shankar Shirur. I'm a co-founder at Stellabs. I've been a telecom engineer throughout my life, and in Stellabs, we have been focusing on applying technology in the dairy sector in India. So that's briefly about me and the co-panelists. So with that, I will hand over to Professor Ashok to take this discussion forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And I really look forward to discussing this with 4 of you, the people who have kind of put significant part of your life into trying to make a difference in rural areas. I want to begin by sort of saying that about 2 months back, our agriculture minister very proudly announced that the income of a farmer household today has crossed 10,000 rupees per month. Now, when I read that, it kind of, those of us who are used to living in rural areas, when you get 10,000 rupees per month household income, we can't even imagine what it means. And this is the average that is there, and it was a matter of pride, which means that it was even lower earlier. At the same time, we also see that by and large, the youth no longer want to stay in rural areas. When particularly, even if they have got high school degree, they want to migrate to urban areas, basically because by and large, the belief is that the agriculture is non-remunerative. We saw a very big farmers movement about a couple of years back, where farmers were making only one statement, that we do not, even getting a peon job somewhere in urban areas gives me higher, particularly in large cities, gives me larger income. This is the overall situation, widely perceived to be a situation. And yet, large percentage of our people continue to live on agriculture. And I know several companies in recent times which are kind of trying to sort of say that we will make a difference. We will change this situation by using technology. Of course, today we have got two things. One, telecom we have reached. At least 2G, 3G connection, maybe 4G connection we have reached. So it's possible to connect to them. It is the second game that we got is to large extent we have power. Sometimes not necessarily 100%, but significant amount of power is available. Can we then use technology to make a difference in life of the people? And I'll say the primary change one would like to see is some significant income. Such that the household income become from 10,000 rupees per month at current prices to 50,000 rupees per month. So is that something like that possible? Can technology help them get there? And I think it is in that context we will open this up and start by asking each one of you to first speak for about 4 to 5 minutes. What can technology do? What technology has done? And what is the potential? And then we'll get into question and answer. We'll start with Dr. Sudha Narayanan.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss this topic. I come here as a researcher, and I think of myself as an information broker. So I'd like to share with you a few thoughts that we have accumulated over our experience talking with farmers, doing impact evaluation surveys on the prospects and potential of technology. I'll probably start by looking a little back to where we are so far, what are the impacts we are seeing, and maybe in the next round, I can reflect a little bit on the future. So as I'm sure all of us are aware, the use of technology in Indian agriculture is a statement that homogenizes everything. Now, we know farmers are heterogeneous, commodities are heterogeneous, contexts are different, technologies themselves are heterogeneous, and the players who are in this field today are also very heterogeneous. So it's not possible to give one answer. So I'll try and break it up into 3 parts, and I'll give some examples. So we've seen that it's really important what the technology, who it addresses. So if you look at B2B technologies, that is technologies that are used by midstream players who are then connected to farmers, that has a certain kind of impact as opposed to those that are used directly by farmers. So in our experience, what we find is those who are already big players and for example, input suppliers or even large agribusinesses like ITC that already have very mature supply chains, when they digitize and bring in technology midstream, it's much easier for them to, first, the value proposition is quite high for these midstream players, but over time, one hopes that these efficiency gains will also enable farmers to adapt because farmers have already crossed that first barrier of getting connected to formal institutional players. Now, that's one thing. Now, if you look at a survey we did in peri-urban agriculture immediately after COVID, in COVID, we heard a lot of stories about how farmers were now using digital marketing platforms directly. And in our survey, actually, we found that out of 1,000 farmers around the 4 metros, we found only 1% of them had actually directly transacted online. However, 25% of them had started supplying to supermarket collection centers. And the supermarket collection centers themselves had leveraged online platforms dramatically. So this is to say that even if farmers are not directly leveraging some of these technologies, there are upstream benefits to downstream changes. So this is the way in which technology can even indirectly impact farmers in the B2B space. Now, the B2C space is a lot more different. And here I want to split it again and bring contextual heterogeneity into consideration. Now, we still have areas. So this is our work from Jharkhand, where some civil society actors are trying to send digital advisories to women farmer producer organizations. And there we found that infrastructure is a huge problem. So many startups face constraints that are way beyond their ability to solve. And Professor Jhunjhunwala had mentioned that we do have penetration now of electricity and Wi-Fi internet communication, but we are still far away from where we would be if we really want to reach the farmer in marginalized and resource constrained regions. There is also this idea of social behavior where they were targeting women groups, for example, but anytime there's a smartphone in the family, it's usually with the male member or with the children. And the children, again, as Professor Jhunjhunwala said, have no interest in agriculture. So even these advisories that were coming on, they were not passing on to the mothers who were farmers. So these are the contextual constraints that still pose barriers. The other intriguing feature, especially in the context of fintech, for example, we work with the Reserve Bank of India on a 35,000 household survey, trying to understand the training needs of people in the context of financial literacy. And from that response, we found very puzzlingly, we were anticipating that they would say, teach us how to use online payments and ATM and so on. But actually 52% actually told us that their most deeply felt training need was actually how to fill forms in the bank, or the next biggest chunk was how to open an account. So this sort of suggests that we are maybe some of these farmer facing applications and technologies, the time probably hasn't come in contexts where which are not mature in terms of agriculture, commercialization or innovation. But when you look at the other side, say in commercial soybean agriculture in Maharashtra or AP, where we find the problem of excess, where some farmers in our surveys actually had 30 apps, all of them trying to tell them what to do and giving them package of practice advice. They also had 5 sources of weather information. And there it's a question of credibility. So farmers say, enough of, please don't give us more and more. It's enough if we have one credible source of information. And that speaks to where we are at the back end in terms of data analytics and the quality of information that we are producing. And I think when others talk about willingness to pay for information, the farmer's willingness, our own inference is that it comes more for willingness to pay for credible information rather than just information. And we've seen that in past examples as well. When Reuters Market Light started providing market prices, the farmers said, actually, these prices, the farmers in my village never get it. So because the credibility of that information is not there with the farmers, the willingness to pay is also suspect. I want to conclude with just one other contrast in the area of fintech, and this comes with commodity heterogeneity. Now, if you look at dairy, for example, and I'm sure Mr. Shirur will elaborate on that, there have been very successful examples of digital finance and credit and lending. And if you look at replicating that success to other crops, we may not see as much success because dairy is something that you pour milk every day, and therefore recovery of the loan is much more transparent and easy. Whereas as soon as you go to a crop that's seasonal, then the reluctance of digital credit players to actually use digital technologies or credit score may be lower. I'll stop with that to say that this is a big challenge. The opportunities are huge, and I'll come back to the prospects for the future in the next round.
Thank you, Sudha. Please do not exceed 5 minutes in the first round. Our next talk is Shailendra. When you get 5 minutes, I'm going to wave at you with my hand, and please keep straight. So Shailendra, can you take over?
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, everybody, for inviting us here. What I'm going to say is going to be very, very contrasting to what Professor Sudha said. To set the context, we run an organization that's into horticulture, and we started this organization with the hypothesis that India has a lot to offer, but we are not able to offer because fundamentally there is an issue of information asymmetry. If I set the context of what horticulture is and how it is different from agriculture as a whole, fruits, vegetables, plantation crops, and spices are what is considered within the horticulture segment. Whereas crops like paddy or soybean, and these are all field crops typically. India has about 120 million hectares of farmland, out of which roughly 30 million hectares of farmland is currently under what we call horticulture. But the biggest difference between both of these is that, let's say, a paddy farmer who has 1 acre of farmland would roughly spend about 15, 16, 20, 30,000 rupees in cost of cultivation and could get about 40, 50, 60,000 in the range in terms of revenue. Whereas that same 1 acre of farmland, if you are growing a crop like, let's say, pomegranate or apple or grape or something like that, the cost of cultivation is in range of anywhere between 1.8 lakh rupees to 3 lakh rupees per acre. And the outcome from that farm is anywhere between 5 lakh rupees to 15 lakh rupees. This is the segment that we work with. And in this segment, things are very, very different. So even a marginal farmer who has, let's say, 3 acres or 2 acres of farmland, who is considered a marginal farmer, in theory, is making about 10-20 lakh rupees per annum, or rather per season, in a tier 3 city in a village. So to come back to the question that Professor Ashok asked, that the agriculture minister mentioned that there is 10,000 rupees per month income. And how do we increase it? I honestly don't know how that calculation came. Like, I know for a fact that agriculture is tax-free. So how, I'm sure government would have its own sources of data. But if I look at things from the horticulture segment, I think the picture is entirely different. When we started this company, we built this company on the idea that India could be as big as an export powerhouse for horticulture as it is for software. And in fact, I strongly feel that India's potential from horticulture export is a lot higher than what we are doing with software. Software is an industry that we built in last 20 years from scratch. But for horticulture, we already have a lot more things in terms of land holding, in terms of people, in terms of agroclimatic zones. So we can grow literally everything under the sun. And in states like Himachal or Maharashtra or Andhra or Karnataka, where a lot of horticulture is done, things are very different. So first and foremost, within this segment, I don't think the per family income is 10,000 rupees per month. I think it's far higher. That's point one. Second, I think the biggest revolution that happened within this segment was the information asymmetry sort of problem that got solved with the launch of likes of Jio, who were able to build infrastructure that provided for dirt cheap data. Dirt cheap data led to communication happening between farmers from different states, different cities, different crops, thousands of kilometers from each other via WhatsApp, via YouTube, and so on and so forth. I think what is the most relevant thing that happened was the fact that farmers are people who generally like to see things to believe. And before that era, you had local examples which would never percolate to let's say, something happening very well in Maharashtra being percolated to Andhra. But I think post the year 2016, after Jio coming to picture, after farmers getting on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on here and there, I think that was broken. And the ability for a farmer to imagine that something can happen without seeing it in person, but rather on a video or hearing from somebody else. That ability played a part in horticulture per se. So within those next few years, a lot of farmers were exposed to many ideas which talked about bigger possibilities than they were exposed to. So in general, Professor Ashok, I would put it in this way, that there is already a segment with which something like this is happening, and it is worth learning about of how we go and replicate it in other crops and what are the contexts and costs.
Thank you very much, Shailendra. I think we'll certainly discuss this. There is also a statement that 40% of the produce in both vegetables as well as fruits get wasted. We should look at it. This is something, what does it really mean in context of what you said? Anyway, we'll come back to you. In the meantime, can we ask Mahesh from Acumen? Since he has been investing, please can you take that up?
Yeah, I think I'll actually keep it brief as an introduction. We invest in agriculture with a focus of climate because they are so intertwined. So one can't even think of one vis-a-vis versus the other. So it's intersectionally very relevant to look at both of them. And because that probably affects the farmers the most. And they don't use the word, but that's what it is. Climate affects. So we look at that intersection. Our experience, I would like to kind of say that the thing lies in the middle, right? It's we can just write a very optimistic only one side of the story or start looking very pessimistic. I don't think it is either. I think to take one way or the other, we haven't seen that. Our experience is that it is hard. We have invested in a dairy company, which has gone through several models and then now trying to adopt technology, and we have seen that. On the other hand, we have also seen a company which is handling exactly the last point, which was getting made in the wastage of vegetables through a technology, which is hard technology, not internet technology, but more like a solar dryer, and trying to do a very successful scale of that by making that a useful product. So we've seen both. I think the truth lies in the middle. What I mean by that is we all talk about people to pay, etc. I mean, if we look at ourselves for a minute, internet provides a lot of free information, a lot of information. How much do we pay? So for us to expect that farmers will pay for information, etc., I think it's sometimes we oversimplify some of this. I think if there is value for the farmer, they will pay. And we have seen that they are willing to buy hard products. They buy, even unfortunately, sometimes poor quality hardware all the time because they can touch and feel and they know it will do something. I think the thing about technologies, if they are able to see the value and if they are able to increase their livelihood, increase their income, like Shailendra is saying, if horticulture is going to improve significantly what they do in 1/4 of the acre, 1/4 of the plant, etc., I think there is a possibility of definitely using the technology to move. There's a lot of learning here. Dairy is, in a way, front runner. It adopted a lot of technology. White revolution happened here. But it's still taken much longer. And I'm sure Ravi Shankar will share. They're doing a phenomenal job with Stella Apps, but it's still how much is to be done before we can see that technology gets adopted to the level one would like it. I think there's a learning there, and it's not so easily transferable from one to another. There are different contexts, as Sudha was rightly mentioned. So I think I will place a cautionary tale. We focus on the farmers a lot. We want farmers' livelihood to improve. Unless their stake goes up, unless they are going to get higher value add in the chain, I think adoption will be slower. I think that's a statement I can make. Unless they see their value going up, I think it's not a technology question. It's a business model question. It's a question of whether the farmers can see their value in the value chain going up rather than being only treated as a last end commodity. If that's the only way, it's going to be harder. We can keep having 35 apps on the phone and it will be very hard to make choices in that business model. So we had a mixed experience on this, but we have learned a lot. We are hopeful, optimistic, but not blindly optimistic. I'll also say that. And it needs a lot of work before models get there.
Thank you very much. Ravi, can you now take over and spend next few minutes, 5 minutes?
Sure, sir. We have spent last 11 years in applying technology in dairy industry. As Mahesh mentioned, dairy has been a front runner. India is today the #1 milk producer in the world. I think when we got independence, we were like, I don't know, 35th or something like that. And today we are #1, and that too by far. I mean, the #2 is US, and they're half of our size. But at the same time, in terms of quality and in terms of farmer profitability, are we #1? I don't think we'll be able to say with that confidence. Maybe there are pockets, maybe Gujarat, it's very good. Maybe some other cooperatives are doing well, but in every nook and corner, is it the same? I don't think so. So dairy, when we started, we didn't have any idea as to which particular sector of agri or dairy which sector of rural economy we would affect. And we got introduced to dairy, and since then we have latched on to dairy, and we've seen that dairy has, with an open arm, adopted technology. One thing we have seen is that tech need not be paid for only by the farmer. Okay, there are other means by which we could make the tech to pay for itself, right? Of course, if the farmer is earning 10,000 rupees, which is way too low, but if you are able to put another 10,000 in the farmer's pocket and then get 2,000 out of it, maybe farmer will happily pay for it. That is one thing we have seen. Second thing is that, dairy companies, private dairies, cooperatives are happy to pay for some of the tech if it improves their supply chain cost, if it means that in every village, instead of 100 liters, they can get 150 liters. That means for the same vehicle that goes into the village, it can now collect 2 more cans of milk, or with the same number of people, they can collect more milk. Dairy companies are willing to pay more. Second one is, of course, the customers. If, today customers, we are seeing that many of the customers want to know what they're eating, what they're consuming, is the farmer getting paid? Some part of the customer segments are also willing to pay a little bit more if they can see things like traceability of the product, see that, okay, this is not some white looking liquid, but it is authentic milk. It is coming from these many farmers. It came on this day by the time it reached my glass. So customers are also willing to pay for some part of the tech. And of course, people like fintech or insurance could also be paying for some of these, is what our experience has been. So tech need not directly mean only farmers have to pay, but through other means also we have to try to make the tech work towards the profitability of the operations. I'll stop there, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think one of the common thing that I see being heard from Shailendra, from Ravi, as well as to some extent from Mahesh, that farmers are willing to pay for technology if technology really benefits them. So, and it has to, if it increases their income. Sudha, I'd like you to comment on this. Is this something that you see that farmers are willing to change and adopt technology, figure out, even in difficult situations, how to take technology, provided they get money?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in our experience, the farmers are seeking actively technologies, and very often there is this myth that farmers don't want to take risks, but actually they are the most exposed to risk, and so they are actively seeking technologies. But the ecosystem, I think Mr. Tiwari already mentioned, that ecosystem has changed rapidly today, and they're able to access many of these. But we need to go an extra step to ensure that they are able to sort through this and are better informed in the way they make they select their technologies. And once they see that connect, the willingness to pay will definitely be there.
So there seems to be consensus on this, that finally we have to provide economic benefit. If economic benefit is there, then tech will be absorbed. Now, a side question which came up partly from Sudha's comments, that yes, we have got digital, we have got internet and phone connectivity, we have got power, but still it is there and not there. I think this is something that we hear to some extent. I like Fallon's comment on that. To what extent in the places you see that it is there, or it is about both power and connectivity?
I think the way to look at it is how power and connectivity has, and I would probably start from here. I think we together conclude that if anything, for that matter, provides economic benefits, there are takers to it, even farmers. In the year,
we know that, we have concluded on that. I am asking power and connectivity. How universal it is, to what extent it is not universal?
Right. So see, unless you have a good road, you can't go from point A to point B. So the opportunity even to go from point A, point B is not there. It's very hard. But the fact that we have power and connectivity opens up that infrastructure for the farmer to go from point A to point B.
We know that. How universal is it?
Sir, it's not really very universal. You could go in pockets of Odisha and you'll find a very different picture. And you could go to pockets of Maharashtra and you'll find a very different picture. So it's not homogeneous, it's very heterogeneous. It also depends on certain other aspects like education. It also depends on certain other aspects like what crop even the farmer is growing.
I'll take that question further. Mahesh, what do you think? Do you think 70% of our rural areas have already got it? 80% have got it? 50% have got it? Can I hear from Mahesh, from Sudha, from Ravi? I am looking at power and connectivity. And when I say it should be there at least significant percent of time. Let's say 12 hours, power and connectivity. Mahesh,
I think, I think it is mixed only, because what we have reached in terms of power is, I think, universal electrification, which means everywhere it is reached. But it doesn't mean it's everywhere available at a level in which you have a 3-phase power available for doing an agricultural equipment for 10 hours, 15 hours. No. And we have and I can say this from a real example. Then this thing is one of the companies we have invested in, which is Promethean, which is a chilling company. Their proposition is actually giving an alternate source because electricity is not available. And that's the only reason milk chilling happens at a village level and then goes to
do you think that it is there in 70% area? 50%?
No, the electricity is there everywhere. But I think consistent availability to make some of these things work is still not there, number one. That's as far as the power is concerned. Consistent availability for many things, including 3-phase power, I wouldn't call it is available more than probably 50-60%. I may be wrong, but this is based on anecdotal and what my personal experience based on what I have seen the companies we have worked with. And I think even Ravi can add to it because they would be knowing this part very well.
What about
the connectivity part? There, I think it's not just reach. It is the social factor. What both Shailendra and Sudha are saying are very important. I think when the phone comes, I think the first one who takes a smartphone in the family is a male member. And if that male member is if he's not in the farming and he's not all the time, then and there's a woman farmer, there is an impact on it. If it is a child, there is a different impact on it. But it's growing. What last 1 or 2 years, we are seeing that growth is quite rapid. So we think it will happen faster. I think till now we've been talking about it. That's my take on it. I think this will go faster.
Sir, if I can add on, we are in about 40,000 villages as of today in 13 states. Connectivity is better than electricity connection, is my opinion. So in out of the 40,000 villages, maybe 1% of the villages we get don't get connectivity that well. I would be proud of, I'm being a telecom engineer, I would be proud that telecom network connectivity has reached in 99% of the villages, at least in the states where we are present. I wouldn't say probably Tripura and such places, but all the milking, 13, 14, 15 states where milk production is fairly high, 99% is the decent coverage of network. I mean, somewhat decent, you can get some connectivity. But electricity, I can't say with the same confidence. In some of the places, in some of the big states in India, you have to struggle to get a three-phase connectivity. If you have to put a milk chiller, for example, even single phase to get power during the milk collection time is difficult. So we end up putting a battery, a small solar panel, and stuff like that. So electricity probably is 70%, 65, 70% is a decent coverage. What is needed by some of our systems.
Sudha, will you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I agree that electricity is probably a binding constraint for many of the subsectors that depend on refrigeration and so on. On digital advisory, I just want to share that we did a message level analysis. So we work with somebody who was sending out advisories to farmers, and they had sent 30,000 messages over 2 seasons. And we found that only 600 had successfully reached the telephone of the farmer. So it could be as bad as that, but it could also be near 100% in other places. So I think it's hard for me to give one number for India as a whole, but this is an example of the constraint.
Thank you.
I wanted to just take up one point. This is a phenomenal example Sudha has given. I think you said 30,000 messages in what period?
Over 2 seasons.
2 seasons, okay. But I'm just wondering, if I get 30,000 messages, even in whatever this 2 seasons, I don't know how I will react. If this is what all the companies are doing, I have no idea about this.
It's 30,000 to 25,000 farmers or 20,000 farmers.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
the number of farmers changes. Okay. Yeah, okay. But the total, so they're pushing out 30,000 individual messages.
That is okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was exact. That is the level of advisory. Thanks to advisory, it will never be a business model.
Okay. So moving on from infrastructure. So we did talk about electricity and connectivity. Telecom connectivity seems to be getting better. Electricity, particularly 3-phase, reliable, is still missing, but improving. That is what I hear. Now, the next important question that I want to ask, there are farm mechanization equipment, and there has been a strong feeling that there could be service companies which can offer farm mechanization equipment along with people on hire, like a Ola or Uber. How much of that is taking place? Farm mechanization. Can I call in a farm as a farmer? Can I call in for any equipment? Do they come and along with people? And do they also come with people and power? Shailendra, will you like to take that up?
Certainly, sir. I think first I'll try and establish a need of it. While you are growing a crop, you go through tilling operation, you go through field preparation. Then when you are regularly doing it, you need irrigation systems, tractors, you need sprayers, and so on and so forth. If you look at it in context of the ability of a farmer to purchase, I think if crops like wheat or paddy will be considered, it will definitely sound like a disconnect. Second is this country is also going through a very interesting phase of general urbanization. So people are migrating, people are moving. And it is impacting the lowest strata. So people who were working on farms earlier have found better opportunities in city. So there is an undercurrent of unavailability of farm labor. Now, between both of these, there is definitely an opportunity. And I think there are many companies already doing it. There is a company called EM3 Services, if I remember. There is another company which Mahindra acquired, I think it was called Tringo, who started very well, who started very early, I would say. But I think the need of these kind of companies is definitely there. And we may not have very big names, sir, but I have hundreds of examples of farmers who loan their tractor or who loan their sprayer. So that phenomenon, I think, is already going on. Whether we have a business player who has become very large, that I don't know. But from need perspective, the need is there. And from serving that need perspective, there are local village level entrepreneurs or companies like EM3 or Tringu who are doing that.
Mahesh, is any of the company that you are investing in the services company which will take equipment, people, and maybe power, because if power is not available with a battery bank or whatever, and provide service? How common is that? How have you seen that?
No, from our direct experience is limited. I think it's a similar few companies that Shailendra is talking about. I don't think this is taken off as much as one would have thought. This is same two companies' name which keeps getting quoted on all of them, and I don't think there have been.
And what is the reason why more companies are not coming up?
I wouldn't be able to say that, but I think I don't think the revenue model is that clear in the business model still. That's my take on it. Because I think this thing about converting into a service, whatever it is, again, it has to all come down to how do you take that service revenue back? And is there a periodicity of income which will pay for the farmer? I think these are questions which are very relevant for making any of this happen. I think when people are in that two cycles and when there is when the income happens in discrete lots, how do people play the service in the way we think of service and frequency of income? I think these are all factors to think about in a business model. I have a feeling this is limited success. I'm not sure about it having taken. That's our experience.
I would like to add something here, Mahesh. My learning is that this will never take off in let's say a 10,000 crore business. But why will that happen? That happens because farmers are very cooperative in nature. That is common between a farmer network in Andhra, Arunachal, or Maharashtra. So what we have seen is a farmer who has a sprayer lends it to the entire village, makes money out of it. So these companies are competing with villagers, farmers, and that's very hard. Like there is no specialized equipment per se. All those equipments
Absolutely.
are there within that.
But if the villager is giving it on rent to others, that's also the same thing. I mean, it's just corporatization is not important. It's the same thing. So there is sharing going on. Ravi, can you comment on this? Particularly,
yes, so I see. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Finish.
On this equipment, particularly in dairy sector, is there something like this happening or not even required? Since every day, dairy is an everyday business.
So I see a few places where some of this is already happening, like rice harvesters, JCBs. The renting business is already happening. Rice harvester, those big equipments, I can see if I travel in in some of the rice beds in Andhra, etc. People give it on rent. I can see those machines getting transported. So I think that potential is there. In the dairy industry specifically, things like bucket milkers, every farmer might not be able to afford a mechanized milking machine for his cow, right? So I have seen in some villages, at the center of the village, one sets up a milking parlor and cows walk in there, and the farmer, maybe farmers, somebody from the farmer's household walk along with the cows, and milking happens right there. And dairy company collects milk also in front, because milking also has happened right in front of their eyes. So quality is also sort of guaranteed. Nothing has been mixed. So I have seen some of these models getting evolved, but not in large scale. I think, every farmer to buy a bucket milker, for example, costs 40,000 rupees, 45,000 rupees. And then you have to have electricity, small generator for it, or a DG, small, at least one kerosene generator, etc., which every farmer might not be able to afford. So in some of the milking areas, I'm seeing such experiments being done very successfully, sir. And I think CapEx might be one of the reasons why many companies might not be able to doing this. In fact, in one of our chilling centers, I know that somebody is trying to offer that, I will put up an array of solar panels and battery bank, and I will give you the power. Again, for them, CapEx is a challenge. We are not doing it because of our CapEx, and if they are doing it as a service, for them also CapEx might be a challenge. Startups trying to do software based and other things is slightly more easier than getting this. So that's my guess, if I I could do that.
Professor, I have another small perspective on this, which I want to add. I think when we take CapEx and then say, okay, give it as a service, I think this is quite often, to be honest, investor kind of advice. Oh, you can't, the CapEx can't be affordable, put it as a service. But the point is that is just a financing solution for the company. I don't think it makes a difference to the farmer. Unless that point is understood, I think this is a very...
One second.
Yeah, that is different. If it happens at the... Yeah, exactly. But if just take a CapEx and give it service is not the model. I think that's just financing solution. I don't think it is a customer solution for the farmer.
Mahesh, there are two parts of it. One is, of course, CapEx as a service, but more important, I think it's a sharing. A tractor which is going to till one farm versus 25 farms. I think there is a...
That is totally fine. That's
sharing is, I think, equipment sharing, maximum usage of equipment is a key part. Let me come to a more fundamental.
So may I add a couple of points to this? I think the equipment market, as Mr. Tiwari said, we have a very sophisticated equipment rental market, where combine harvesters from Punjab go all the way to Bihar. So I think that's a very efficient system, and it's hard to counter that. But what we are seeing are really interesting experiments locally on labor teams. For example, Kudumbashree, the government of Kerala, in the face of labor constraints, have started forming women's agriculture worker groups. And they go from farm to do the operations. Likewise, minor implements. So a lot of the women's-based FPOs under the National Rural Livelihood Missions have these equipment rentals for women farmers, because in the rental market, women get the least priority. So to resolve some of these, there are these minor, very interesting experiments that are going on. But as you said, the solution need not be from corporatization.
Thank you.
I think there's a good market already.
Let me move to another area, water. Since like your infrastructure, electricity, and connectivity, water plays another very, very important role. What do you see happening with water? We keep on hearing all kinds of reports. What is actually happening that you see in the areas that you work on? I'll start with maybe, again, Shailendra.
Sir, it's a very dear subject, so I will not stop within 5 minutes.
No, I will not let you speak for 5 minutes.
I hope that is okay.
This is question answer, so they has to be done in about 2 minutes or so. I'll stop you.
So I will try and put it a little bit more succinctly, sir. When we started this company, our realization was that India is a country of plenty. So plenty of water, plenty of land, plenty of people. Unfortunately, that is also our problem. So from pure horticulture perspective in which we work in, farmers' tendency is to give water as much as possible because it's free. Now that causes a crop level issue. Like you submerge your root within a lot of water, the root cannot breathe, and you have poorer yield as compared to whatever reason we were giving that water. In fact, we ran a sociological experiment where we said we are going to price water in certain way, and we launched what we call Fasal Water Credit. I will tell you the impact. The impact was this, that between the year 2021 to April 2022, our farmers together saved 23.11 billion liters of water. Why it happened? There were two reasons to it. One reason was that 2016, 17, 18 sounds like a very different era to me. There is water shortage in this country. You go and talk to farmers in Simla, you talk to them in Sangli, you talk to them in Anantapur. Everybody will tell you water is a problem. So sudden realization among farmers is that water isn't free and it's not always available. So there is some understanding. That's part one. Part two is the fact that just like us, there are other organizations working on helping the farmer understand the value of it. So in general, I see that going forward, the farmer is going to perhaps appreciate the availability of water more. But in general, it is a depleting resource right now, and a lot needs to be done in this direction.
Ravi?
Sir, dairy again is an industry which needs a lot of water. Cows need a lot of water. Milk processing needs a lot of water. Cleaning of the equipments, milk chilling equipments, milk processing equipments needs a lot of water. We have seen that it is a limiting factor. Dairies are taking steps. Dairy companies are taking steps to how to limit the water usage in at least in the processing centers, chilling centers, etc. We have in fact seen that in some of the districts in one of our operational areas, we started the milk procurement and then figured out that the arsenic content of the water is very high. I mean, then we had not even thought about it when we started the operation, right? I mean, now we have added into our checklist saying, hey, check this before you start our operation in that area. So quality of water in general is not we can't take it for granted nowadays. So we do check and it is a limiting factor in the dairy industry very heavily at the moment.
Mahesh, do you want to comment on this water issue?
No, I don't have anything to add. I think both the points have been covered. I think there is a quantity and quality is a big issue. I think we need to really be careful about it.
Sudha?
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a policy disconnect because of the pricing of power and water, as Mr. Tiwari mentioned. But there's also this conflicting policies like solar irrigation pumps without fixing the others. So there's an incentive to extract groundwater. So we need to, I think that a lot of it is to do with policy corrections that are required.
Okay. Let me, given that these constraints and at least in a few areas, what about finance? I think one of the things that many of you do is providing finance. How well it is moving. Many companies have now starting to try to take finance. I know Still Apps is there, of course. Even the companies like Samunati is doing quite well, taking a farm finance. How good is the finance? What is the rate at which finance is being taken? How is the interest rate impacting this whole business? Any one of you want to take up?
I could start, sir. Yes, we have an arm called as MUPE, which is a business correspondent, which is a BC, and we work with likes of SBI, Kotak, ICICI, Airtel, Samunati, etc. So what we have seen is that access to finance is a bigger problem to the farmers than the rate. Okay, I mean, many times the dairy companies may have a challenge. One, they have a mindset saying, if I give a loan to a farmer who comes to my collection center, next week onwards he'll stop coming to my collection center. So therefore, I won't give loan to my farmers as a principle. I mean, this has been a mindset challenge. We've been slowly working towards it. We are showing that we have, believe it or not, 100% success rate in the loans that we give out. We give sachet loans, we give micro loans, we give cattle loans, etc. But surprisingly, it's 100%. I keep telling my colleagues from my MUPE team that you take too less risk, it looks like. But to be fair to them, they don't. I mean, they take quite a lot of risk, and 100% is the recovery rate, because farmers come on a daily basis to pour milk, and if you have good relation with them, they don't worry about giving that money back a little bit. They won't spoil that relation with you. 24%, 22% interest rate for a 5,000 rupee loan over 6 months makes a difference of 150 rupees. That's all to them, right? 18% loan versus 24% loan. Access to loans is a bigger challenge. We have started working with people like Bhilwara Dairy, with Paras, our Mumar, various other places. We have started loans of different categories, and we are getting fairly good response on that front, sir. The other challenge they have is, how do I withdraw cash? Okay, you give me loan. How do I withdraw cash? We make it a point that to none of our farmers we do cash transaction. We do digital transaction. Their major response is cash ke liye kya karna padega. So we try to work with people like Airtel and others to create cash withdrawal systems in the villages. So that has been given us fairly good results, is what I would say from my experience.
Shailendra, since you mentioned that the area that you work in, vegetables and fruits, the input costs are much, much higher. Output benefit is also. So tell me about the finance.
Sir, if I'm being very, very honest, I don't think access to finance in general is a problem in horticulture. And I will tell you why. The average land holding in horticulture is not 1 acre or 2 acre. It is about 3 hectares. Second, even if you grow the crop which has least amount of cost of cultivation, still your average cost or average revenue per hectare is about 4 or 5 lakh rupees. So within horticulture, I think in general, there is very little access problem. And with government schemes like KCC, that is Kisan Credit Card, you get like 3 lakh rupees on 4% interest rate. More often than not, the government also goes ahead and wipes out that interest rate. I think with my own personal experience, I haven't seen access to finance as a problem. I am talking about
saying your primary thing is 3 hectares and things like that. That means you are working with mid to large farmers rather than small farmers. Is that?
Actually, I would look at it slightly differently, sir. One part of it is that in general, the land holding is on higher side. Second part of it is, even if, let's say, I am a 1 acre tomato farmer, my average revenue is still about 5 lakh rupees per season. So I'm talking about it from both the perspective. And because I am again a farmer in tier 3 city in some village where I am making 5 lakh rupees per year, it doesn't necessarily cause a problem of access. He already has an access. So in our experience, we do see access, and we do see that farmers do negotiate about interest rate. Even if it is 200 rupees, 300 rupees, I totally agree with Ravi. In general, it's very less. Whether you take money on 18% or 24%, your consideration is very less. But in our case, we have seen there is very limited access problem. And in our case, we have also seen that farmers have matured to a level where they go and negotiate for that 2%, 3% interest rate also.
Thank you. Thank you. Sudha, you are smiling. I can't hear you, Sudha.
Sorry, I was probably reflecting on the fact that maybe Mr. Tiwari is working with larger farmers, just as you were mentioning, but also the fact that the very entry barrier into horticulture has already been conquered by them. So they are not like the others in some sense. And I think one member of the audience has written that 57% has no institution finance. And here I just want to highlight, as a researcher, what we are seeing increasingly is the interlinked transactions. So either with the trader, and that used to be the case, traders and commission agents offered loans upfront. And so that was easy access, because when they sold back, when farmers sell back to the same trader or commission agent, they get immediate cash. Whereas if they had sold to a distant trader, they would have to wait for several months before they get the cash. So this interlinked transaction is important. What we are seeing recently is that input dealers have started lending money. So you buy inputs on credit and pay back, or either sell to a cousin of the input dealer who's a trader. So these kind of arrangements have come up recently.
Mahesh, do you want to add something?
I think I think it's totally correct. I think smallholder farmers still have significant access problem. And we see that in a couple of examples. We see it in the dairy industry itself. And Ravi Shankar has pointed out, unless there is an effort done by the company, Stellapse is supposed to be equipment, they're also getting into finance. So this is a kind of a challenge one has to face in actually conquering that. Similarly, companies have, I think, to the smallholder farmers, even in something like a dairy industry where one can have productive assets, I think it's very difficult to get loans unless there is some institutional mechanism which supports the funders. I don't think funding is that easily available. And even in some other equipment company, we have seen again and we have a contrasting example where if it's backed by a productive asset, they are able to get funding for that very specifically.
Thank you. What about insurance? How much role the insurance is playing in this whole thing? Because to some extent, agriculture is dependent on a lot of things, both from water, rainfall, insects. How much insurance prevalent? And I would say the same thing about even horticulture. What extent insurance is getting there? And is technology helping insurance getting there? Again, Ravi, you want to take that up?
Sure, sir. One set of insurance, as you mentioned, is about water or the yield insurance. I think the Kisan Bima Yojana. Many of the farmers are not even aware of the presence of Kisan Bima Yojana, how to get access to Kisan Bima Yojana. I think a lot of work is left to be done to even increase the awareness of that. That is one. Secondly, I think rural areas are looking for a different type of insurance. Okay, I mean, maybe variable, at least with our dairy farmers, we see variable insurance coverage. If I am giving 200 liters of milk every week, I might want this kind of insurance coverage. And next week, maybe I'm able to pour 250 or 150. My coverage increases or decreases. So I think in the insurance area, there's a lot of innovation that is possible. I don't think we should stick to regular insurance type of, fixed premium, fixed coverage like that. So depending on how much you are contributing, your could go up and down. Secondly, maybe packaged insurances. Maybe a little bit of it's not only your cattle getting covered, your child is also getting covered, your health insurance is covered, etc. We try to provide insurance, for example, for our milk collection agents and their families. Depending on how much milk they collect, we try to cover them. We try to work with some of the new age insurance providers. We do these things. I think there's a lot of innovation.
Others have comment on this. Any one of you, Shalendra, Mahesh, Sudha, on insurance?
Not additive to that. I think it's totally captured already, so nothing to add more. Okay. It's limited and needs to be packaged very differently and not the way the standard insurance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another point, if I may add, if nobody else has to add, sir, is about the cattle insurance. Many of the insurance companies, I won't take names, they're worried about how to overcome the scenarios where purposely or not purposely misrepresenting the cattle, right? I mean, firstly, there is no concept of health insurance for cattle or yield coverage. It's only life. If the cattle is dead, you take this much money. That's it, right? I mean, because insurance companies have no way of knowing cattle's health and other things. If that could be improved, that would be good. And the second thing is, how do we make insurance companies get more trust in the farmers? That is another thing that could be worked upon.
Thank you. I want to move to one more. Processing and packaging rather than selling the produce directly. What extent is it picking up? I know for milk, there is a certain milk processing that is done, but how much is processing and packaging in agriculture and dairy sector is picking up in the villages itself rather than elsewhere?
We have one. I can talk about one example. Yeah, I have one example. One of the companies we have invested in, they do processing at a very local level, which is S4S. They take the dry produce and make it, sell it to either the B2C companies or to HoReCa segment. They make processing of the product. Second is even, of course, as you mentioned, dairy, it is definitely possible. And the analogy I keep thinking about, and this is something out there is that large scale, which happens in dairy, which has happened, technology has happened, all that happens. What's the way it can be broken? How can, I mean, go back to the thing we all talk about trust, and they should trust the insurers. I'm also thinking, how can farmers trust all this? How can farmers get more value? And one of the things is that if they are having a higher part of the value chain, and one way is what can be different value chains. We still think about straight away connecting it to large. The random example I have, it's probably inappropriate. One is say something like a beer. And if you have a beer which is microbrewery, it actually has value. So when we all the time we're talking about dairy only as going from one to the Amul or to the ultimate end, which is a large, I think then there is a very different example because the farmers are seen as a last mile commodity supplier. I think that's where it is. If we are able to create, I mean, there are value chains which are coming up, which takes actually farmers' value higher. I think that's the way I see the things changing for farmers and them adopting technology as well as financial products.
Thank you. Thank you. Horticulture area is where things get perished and the prices fluctuate a lot. Processing and packaging can kind of help in stabilizing the prices. So shall
we lost you?
I think we lost the proposal.
Officer, we lost connect with you.
I think you're asking processing and packaging in the horticulture, Shailendra. Maybe if you'd like to address that.
I think, especially in context to horticulture, processing and packaging are very, very important. And we already see it in many ways, Ravi. Like, for example, Himachal in Shimla and Kulu, which are major apple growing belts, right? There are many farming societies. So they package their produce. There are certain pre-processings that are done at the farm level. In fact, with other commodities like red chili, right? Guntur mein, we have red chili and a lot of infrastructure is there where you can dry it, you can process it, you can store it. So in general, I think in horticulture segment specifically, the role of packaging and processing is well understood even at farmer level. And even in terms of practices, I've seen farmers saying that if I do this practice in this particular way, the shelf life increases, or this happens, or the shine increases, and so on. So I think in general, this phenomena is well understood within horticulture segment, probably a little bit more in terms of spices, a little bit more in terms of fruits, or in plantation crops, a little bit lesser in case of vegetables. But in general, I think this phenomena is well established and various players are already working on it. There is a very innovative company called AgriPods, right? So what they do is they've developed very unique kind of packaging solutions, which increase the shelf life to a significant point. So I do think there is an industry waiting to explode, given that the use case has been well established. And I do think players, even like us, are working on these segments. There are many companies that have come up. And I am hopeful about the processing and packaging part for sure.
The reason why I asked this question, I'm sorry, my correction had gone down in between, is that the processing and packaging can be used particularly for fruits and vegetables to stabilize price, would not allow the price to fall below a certain point. And then the e-market could actually take the produce to the, and sold in some time frame. What do you see, Sudha? Since Shailendra has already spoken, Sudha or Mahesh, what do you see the possibility of that?
So I think what we are seeing is a lot of, as Mr. Tiwari was saying, lot on grading, sorting, and putting it in crates. So preservation of horticulture. But what we are not seeing enough at the local level is transformation of produce. So tomato into tomato paste or juicing plants. And there I think the problem was one of scale and quality. So unless you have a huge cluster producing exactly the same thing with a certain quality, it's very hard to get localized enterprises. And that's been the challenge. There's also farmers don't want good produce, their good produce mixed with somebody else's bad produce. Then all the quality, average quality would then go down. So these are the challenges we are facing. FPOs are still experimenting. A lot of them are doing that. Whether it will succeed or not is we'll have to wait and see.
So that brings me to the question of Farmers Producers Organization, FPOs. What is the role that you see FPO playing in the area in which you work? And what can they potentially do? Anybody wants to take up? Mahesh, are you? Or
I think
on FPO, Farmers Producers Organization?
I think there are FPOs and FPOs, and there are several FPOs. So we need to be, broad brushing them there are so many FPOs, and there are few which work well. And any social organization also, if I could extend by that thing, I think there is a definite role for some level of collectivization, cooperatives, etc. from 2-3 perspectives. One is, I think that gives also confidence for financing, I've noticed. At least I've noticed that for Promethean when they are trying to do procurement at the local level. There is a definite role they play. They also play a role in terms of making technology adoption easier. So there are definite roles FPOs or some good social sector organizations play, which are helpful for private enterprises. Only thing is, I'm not sure it's there everywhere. So someone who starts doing that with a good place, a good non-profit or a good FPO, can they go to another place and replicate? That's where the challenge will come in terms of replicating. But I think it is definitely, there are quite a few which
there
do
are
that,
some
but there are a small
comments
percentage.
There are some comments on the comment section. One is from Sneha Gundia, another way Ajay Parekh, that they are working with FPO. Is it, I don't know that it is possible for them to speak up. Probably they cannot speak. Is it only the panelist and I can speak, or can the others also speak? They have just said FPO is very good and I'm working with FPO. So wanted a little more broader perspective. I think probably they cannot, cannot speak. Ravi, do you
Professor
see the role of FPO in your place?
In dairy, FPOs are doing quite well. Actually, Mother Dairy works with 5 biggest FPOs in India: Sahaj, Bani, Mahi. Near Tirupati, there is a woman's milk FPO, in fact. So in dairy, FPOs have proven already a very good use case, provided there is a good market linkage. Mother Dairy provides excellent market linkage for them. So they're not worried about why do we market it, whether I will get the margin or no. So in that case, they're doing extremely well. And I think it's also, FPO is also a cleaner approach, less political interference compared to maybe other models in dairy. So FPOs in dairy has worked quite well, provided market linkage is good. If the market linkage is not good, then it's a little bit of a issue in dairy industry.
Okay.
So if I may add to...
we have almost 7. Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Sudha.
Yeah. With the
last 30 seconds, I'll give it to each of you. 30 seconds to each of you. Sudha, start.
If the FPCs, I think, face an inherent tension between being community-based organizations versus profit-oriented. And what we are seeing is a huge funds constraint that as soon as the funding stops, many of them implode. So that's a big challenge. But going back to technology, which is really the overarching theme, I think there are huge prospects. I think we need to opt for a strategy of gradualism. Learn as it's better to get it right than to do it fast. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Mahesh, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just add to the fact that the technologies can prove the value to the farmer, and farmers' value in the chain goes up. I think there is no issue in adoption. And anything like a FPO, etc., or collectives are also helpful towards the process, and they need to be utilized at the early stage.
Shailendra.
I think very similar views as Mahesh mentioned. I think it's about value creation. I've seen more often than not, if there is value, the farmers pick it up. Technology for the sense of technology is totally useless.
Okay, Ravi, you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add to the fact that, sir, how do ESG and SDG goals can subsidize technology a little bit, right? I mean, if my tech can help SDG and ESG goals, who will pay for it? I'm not yet very clear. Maybe the answer will emerge over time. That is something that we might need to think about.
I think this was very much in my mind as the next question. I think ESG and SDG, but I think we have run out of time. So we'll stop here for today. I think one thing emerged very clearly, the ESG, SDG, we did not discuss. We discussed many, many other areas. What came out, as was been mentioned by Mahesh and Shailendra and every one of you, is that it must have an immediate benefit to the farmers. Technology, if it has an immediate benefit to the farmers, they are ready to adopt it. That it is not that they are technology averse, but if it is not, and if it is a kind of, oh, it will finally benefit, just adopt it, then they are not willing to pay for it. And flooding them with more and more apps is also getting us nowhere. We need to therefore make a business model for all our intervention, and that will really help the farmers. There is a large number of things to be done. Our agricultural sector is still in a fairly poor state. The numbers that I talked about, 10,000 rupees per household average income, is not mine. This was the agricultural minister speaking in parliament, saying that it has reached that number. So I presume the numbers are not wrong, are not very far off, even if there is some parts of it is not visible. I think we really have to make a difference to work towards when do we get it to 50,000 rupees per month per household. Thank you very much. I think we'll stop it here. And I know there are a number of questions, number of comments. I hope somebody is able to preserve them and bring them up. Thank you. Thank you. And I will wind up here.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
thanks,
We'll get back with the answers to all the people who asked the questions. Thank you.